Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Josh Lowe, who is the singer and guitar player of the band Riverside Drive, a punk rock band out of Ontario, Canada. We talk about the start of the band, the lyrical content, pretty explicitly and pretty in depth when it comes to whatever it takes. It's more of a politically charged, socially charged song, which anyone who watches this podcast or listens to this podcast knows that's something that I really care about and really find interesting. So we dove into that. We just kind of dive into where Josh kind of got into this realm of music and what kind of is going to happen with the band going forward. And so, again, I really appreciate that Josh came on and did this with me. It was a lot of fun. I really kind of hope he can come on again sometime when we see some new releases from the band and things of that nature. But either way, it was great to talk to him. Before we get into the episode, just as a reminder, you can find the podcast on all social media at The Powerless Pod. That's all the handles, wherever you can find me. Instagram, Twitter are the ones that I use the most, but you can also find me on TikTok, Facebook. I guess that's about it. As well as YouTube, same handle. Make sure to follow on YouTube. Make sure to follow wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever other ones that are out there. It should be on there. And just also reach out to me at through email at thepowerlesspod@gmail.com. I like to hear from people, hear constructive criticism, hear what you like about the show. If you're a musician or you're an activist or anything involved in the political social sphere, as well as producers and things of that nature, make sure to reach out to me and we can also get you on the show as well. I've had a lot of different cool guests, whether it's Garrett Russell from Silent Planet, Joey Sturgis, who's a pretty well-known producer in the kind of metal scene. Also on the political social side, had an activist, Shavir Rizvi, who's a good friend of mine, talk both about his journey through politics and also his trip to Iran and all of that he saw there, which was a really interesting episode. So just a good collection of both music and politics and social issues. So if you're into any of those or either of those, even if you're not agreeing with me on one or the other or whatever the case may be, make sure to reach out to me and we can get you on the show. I'd love to have you on. And before we get into the episode with Josh, anyone who's watched the show knows where I'm going with this. I'm going to be plugging the band Whole Heart, a metal band from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Their EP last year, Dreams That Die With You, was my number one EP of 2022. They absolutely knock it out of the park with their music. Production and everything is all in-house by their bass player Kai, which is really, really cool. Very DIY, but it sounds super professional, which is a really cool thing. The guitar riffs, the melodies, their vocalist, who does primarily harsh vocals, really delivers emotion and also power behind a lot of these things, and is also a great vessel for the delivery of the vocals and the lyrics. It's just a really great band that I think a lot of people should check out that maybe haven't. So before we get into the episode, I'm going to play a clip from one of their songs from their latest EP, Dreams That Die With You, and then we'll get into the episode with Josh. So here's a clip from Whole Heart, and then we'll get into the episode with Josh Lowe from Riverside Drive. This hell is not mine. Why is it so hard to just move on? This hell is not my fucking world. Welcome to the Powerless Podcast. For everyone listening, I'm doing an episode today with Josh Lowe, who's the guitarist and vocalist of the band Riverside Drive from Ontario, Canada. How are you doing today, bud?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to have you on. I made sure to wear my Riverside Drive hoodie for this while we're doing this. So
I'm wearing one of my own. I almost wore that one, but I had a psychic prediction that we would be twinning, and I didn't want to embarrass you.
Yeah. No, yeah, sounds good. Gotta self promote in multiple ways, right? So there we go. To start off today, we'll go back and talk about the start of the band and obviously your EP you put out previously last year. But I want to get into these two newest songs that you put out the last couple of weeks. You put out Whatever It Takes, and also the newest one that just came out on Friday, Counting Down the Days. Kind of talk about both of these because they're a bit different from what you've done before. Obviously, they still sound like the kind of punk rock, pop punk, but a little heavier than pop punk music you've been making. But there's some screaming in both of these. Counting Down the Days is a little more pop punk. Whatever It Takes is definitely like Rise Against, but even like the screams are more, I don't know, like the some of them I was listening to them again today. I was like, man, I can almost hear like a hardcore or like Stray from the Path vibe from the screams, right? So was that like a conscious decision to go heavier with this, or that just kind of go naturally? What was the idea to add some screams and a little more edge to the songs?
That's a good question. It was both. Well, it was a conscious decision that we were going to write some heavier stuff, but I don't think any of us really anticipated how it would go until we were writing. And I, with whatever it takes specifically, I wrote those parts with screaming in mind. So I knew I was going to have to kind of buckle up and dive in a little bit. With Counting Down the Days, it's interesting you pointed out they're both like pretty different sounding, which is also intentional. You know, with this band, we have so many different influences and so many different types of music that we enjoy and want to listen to, that we felt it would be a disservice not only to ourselves but to like the bands that have influenced us for us to just make one kind of sound. And of course we're always going to talk about ourselves as like a pop punk band, whatever, that's fine, but there's always going to be some part of us that wants to come forward and be, you know, heavy hitting and aggressive. And I think whatever it takes is kind of the first little, you know, dip of the toes into that. I think even before that, Wake Up Call was a good like idea of where our headspace was at, but whatever it takes was us like going full tilt into that kind of world and writing that way. And my first foray into screaming on record, and I'm really stoked on all of it.
Yeah, have you I think I saw, have you done these songs live yet, and what's it been like to kind of go from just doing singing to doing singing and screaming together? Because I know some people can do it and it's nothing, you know what I mean? Other people figure out they have to do things differently live when it comes to how you're treating your voice. How's that been?
Well, some people can do it effortlessly, and I'm not one of those. You know, we just did a live recording for our EP anniversary a couple weeks ago, and we played both the new songs at those shows. And on the song Counting Down the Days, the screams are actually our bassist Drew, and he has been screaming for like 10 years, so he knows exactly what's going on. But I'm like super new to it, right? And so I'm still learning how my voice reacts to certain situations and how I need to kind of pace myself in order to like sustain it a little bit. And before we started, I literally said to everyone in the room, I was like, hey, we're a little anxious to do this because I don't know if I can scream or not. So we're going to find out. And honestly, like it didn't go as great as I wanted it to. Like it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. But a problem that I run into when I write is I write so many fucking words in all of our songs because I can't shut up. And so like whatever it takes is like, there are very few gaps between like vocal lines, you know, so it's figuring out how to pace myself or how to maybe sing something a little bit differently so that it doesn't require as much exertion. But we've also talked about having the band subsidize a couple lines. So there's that part in the second verse where the music cuts. The line is like, despite your attempts on our lives, we are still here. But the music cuts in is just vocals. So we talked about maybe having the band take over that part just so I can do a real big like, and
yeah,
you know, but we're still workshopping it, man. And like every time we do it, it's a little bit better. And we're just stoked, man. Like it's really cool. Cause I said it recently. We got like a little bit of press for the song, but I said like a year ago, we would never have even tried this.
Right.
You know? So to have such a substantial indication of growth, not only as musicians, but for myself as a vocalist, because there was I'm 25. I spent 25 years of my life thinking I could just not do this thing that I love listening to, you know? So very gratifying, very exciting that this is on the table now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you talk about having the band take over little lines and stuff. Like every band you see live does that, right? Like we both listen to bands that scream their heads off all the time, and you'll notice the bass player takes a line or two just so the guy can get a breather or maybe like take a sip of water real quick or something, right? That's how live shows go. So that totally makes sense. And it's interesting you said that your bass player did the screams on Counting Down the Days, because I thought first I was like, wow, Josh, that makes sense, because I listened to both of them and both screams are great, but they're so different. I was like, wow, Josh like came out of the gate and did very different tones. It sounds like two different people. That's because it is. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Getting into the lyrical content, starting off with, we'll do the newest one first, Counting Down the Days. I feel like I'm going to double check on the EP real quick because my brain with song titles is terrible. But I thought maybe it was something you sent me that is this song, but I thought you had written another song a while back about like working a job and feeling unfulfilled and all those kinds of things. But was that this one and I'm just like losing my mind only, or was there another one on the EP?
No, so you're thinking of To Live in Hell, which
Oh, okay.
wasn't on the EP,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
we released it in like a weird way so that people thought that it was like part of the EP promotion, and so like that was just a fumble.
Oh, I gotcha.
On our
Yeah,
part.
yeah, I see that right now. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Okay, but Counting Down the Days has sort of a similar lyrical process with it, right? Or what is this? What is the lyrical? I was looking around for the lyrics to read it to make sure I knew what the hell I was talking about. But I guess you could kind of tell us in general what is the kind of lyrical content for that song. Then we'll get to whatever it takes.
Well, that's interesting that you say they're similar. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what do you think?
So, well, okay. So I guess what I meant was not that they're about job, but like, I don't know, Counting Down the Days, like I listened to it again today, like twice right before we came on. And I don't know, it was more of like just, but not about like, I shouldn't have said about jobs or something, but I mean more about like this idea of just like wanting to move on from something or like really counting down until you're able to do something that's more fulfilling to you. But maybe I'm off. So that's where we could talk about this, from your perspective, or you wrote the lyrics, man. So what for you, what's the song about?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I wrote it, but once it's out, and it's not.
Yeah.
And people have said it before me, but like, it's not ours anymore once it's out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
counting down. So To Live in Hell is like 1,000% just about like quitting a shitty job. You know what I mean? And I've always talked about how that can be applied to anything. If your time, your energy, your worth as a person just isn't being valued, it's so limited that you can't spend it all on this place that doesn't give a fuck about you. So
right.
So that was where To Live in Hell came from. And even though it was from personal experiences, it was like written to be ambiguous enough that anybody could kind of take something from it, which is what I really try to do. Counting Down the Days is, even though the lyrics are like just enough, again, ambiguous to kind of be open for interpretation, it is like hyper specific about one person who just like tried to ruin my life last year. And that sounds like super dramatic, but yeah, it just like, it's less about a concept or, something that isn't like valuing you, and more about like, this needs to stop like as soon as possible. Like, this cannot be over soon enough. You know what I mean? Because with To Live in Hell, the whole thing is that like, you can create your own finish line. You can say, fuck you, I quit, and you're done. Whereas Counting Down the Days is more about being like trapped in a situation that you don't want to be in. And you can't consciously put an end to it, but there is an end in sight. There is light at the end of that tunnel. And so that's where I think that's like a little bit different, but it's really interesting that they kind of hopped into the same stream for you. That's really neat. Yeah,
I guess it makes more sense when you say that, because like I think I was kind of putting a little bit on it because I thought I knew what the song was about before I listened to it a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I look at for me, it's like one of those things. I've worked shit jobs and stuff before. I look at the album art or the single art, and it's like a calendar with days crossed off, and like I would always think of that of when my first day I had off was, so I could like not walk into my fucking job, So like there's a little bit of that in there, but that makes a lot of sense with the lyrical content for that one. I think that's, again, you say it's hyper specific, but I think even by the time someone's, you're a few years younger than me, 25, everyone's probably, unless they lived the nicest life imaginable, but in some situation where you're like, God, this person or this thing is just like completely ruining, if not ruining like my actual life, ruining like my emotions and like my feeling on my day to day, right? Like Straight it's up. Like I'm spending time with this person, or this person is someone that's significant in my life, and yet like they're making things horrendous for me, right? So like at that same time, you say it's hyper specific, but it's still a super relatable topic, right? Like, who hasn't felt that at some point?
Yes, that's what we're going for. Relatable.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then you know me, like what I'm into. So, whatever it takes. I like Counting Down the Days. It's a great song. I especially love like the different jumps from it being very melodic, especially with that very like lead. I don't know if it's a lead or a synth in the beginning that goes into everything.
Oh, that's a guitar. Like, yeah,
that is a guitar. I thought so, but it was so effect heavy on it that I was like, that could be a synth, but that's, I figured it was a guitar. But whatever. Maybe. Whatever it takes is like, right up my alley when it comes to the lyrical content. So kind of speak to a bit what that song's about, and just speak to what influenced you with the song.
Yeah, it is 1000% in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the States, which, I live in Canada, so it doesn't directly impact me, but um, there are so many women in my life, and just like people whose bodies are now compromised by legislation, that it's just unacceptable, and I was in Michigan when it happened. I was on vacation with a friend of mine, and the news came out while we were out to breakfast, and it was on the TV. We were in this diner, and the news came up, and it was like pretty quiet in the room. People weren't really like expressing an opinion on either side, even though, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I just remember being so shocked and so distraught and confused about why seemingly nobody else in the room felt the same way I did. Um, and I talked it over with my friend, and she basically said, like, no, this is just like how it's going to keep going for us. And, it was, if I'm getting my timeline right, like it was into the Biden presidency already, but it was still like pretty
Yeah.
new.
So it was like a little over because it was last early summer. I want to
Mm-hmm.
remember. I want to say like June or something. I remember I was teaching summer school. It's the only reason why I remember. And so yeah, I mean, it was less than halfway through his presidency when this occurred, and yeah, there's a whole thing with that. But yeah,
and what gets frustrating for me, and I know you can identify with this too, is like a problem like this comes up where people's lives are endangered by politicians, and this fucking herd of people comes out and they're like, the solution is to vote. And it's like, man, we've been voting since this fucking thing started, and
yep.
nothing is going right, and so whatever it takes came from like a reactionary rage of the realization that voting can be beneficial, but that's not the solution. And
Right.
I would never suggest that people inflict violence upon anybody, but it almost seems like that's what it's going to boil down to enact an actual change. Any significant revolution has been led with violence, and that's just the unfortunate reality of our species and how we interact. Because, as civilized as we are, we all started off as, these primordial fucking primal beings who settled like major disputes with violence and territorial shit, so
Mm-hmm.
um and on like a much smaller scale, it's like, imagine you're getting bullied in school, right? There's this kid who's like a little bit bigger than you. He's kind of an asshole. And you tell your teacher nonstop, you do the thing that you're supposed to do, and nothing changes. But I guarantee you that if you punch that guy in the fucking nose as hard as you can, he's going to think twice about fucking with you. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so that's kind of where it's at. And obviously, for the sake of songwriting and performance, it's kind of an exaggerated version because
Mm-hmm.
the song is about, a violent revolution. Um, it still rings kind of true because there is a part of me
Mm-hmm.
that believes that this isn't going to get better until we burn down their fucking houses, So like,
Right.
so I don't know, maybe that's too over the top, but that's what the song is about, and it was very
No.
reactionary, and yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah, you could say reactionary, but it's still well thought out with what you're talking about in a lot of senses. And like, to talk about what you're talking about, obviously I'm the same way. Like, I don't want violence for anybody, but if you look at history, it's like, there's two quotes that come to mind. One's like from a comedian, the other one was from a former president of the United States, where the president, JFK, I'm probably butchering the quote, but he said something like, those who stifle out, or those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And like, that's just like hits it right on the head for the topic of the song and what the topic you're talking about with Roe v. Wade, and just in general, ripping apart people's rights and a whole sort of different things. And then the other one was from, I think it was from like Flight of the Conchords or something, where one of the guys is like, I believe in revolution, but not through violence. And the other guy was like, okay, so through magic, like, it's like, because it's like, when has that ever happened? So again, you don't want it to be that way, but like you said, it comes to the point that all the things you're supposed to do, you donate to this thing that's supposed to get somebody elected that has the right ideas, or you vote for this person to stave off like the crazy right-wing reactionary person that just wants to rip apart people's rights and make wealth inequality horrendous. And then you do that, and then people did that for Biden, right? Record historic votes, right? On both sides, actually. Trump got the most votes ever for a Republican. Biden got the most votes ever in general in the United States. And during his presidency, that's where this happens, right? So like, it is such a good thing to point out that like, you can do both. You can vote, and then you can also realize that that's not really staving off the crazy. There's a lot more things that people need to kind of think about to if they want to rectify this, or try to at the very least, right?
Voting feels like if somebody broke their leg and you were like, hey, here's a couple Band-Aids, stop the scrape on your leg,
Yeah.
There's an underlying systematic issue, and it's disappointing to admit that it's likely that you and I will never see the change that we want to see, because that significant of a cultural shift takes a long time, and the Institute is designed so that that kind of revolution, that kind of forward momentum is stifled and slowed down at every opportunity. So, it's important that, as bleak and discouraging as things can be, we do our best to keep pushing forward, because, people my age, and like you and I aren't that far off in age, but we always joke like, oh yeah, we got it the worst, how's nobody can buy a house and foods. But like, I'm more worried about the kids, man. Like, I've got nieces and nephews who are, 7 and under, and right now things are fine for them because they're kids, right? But like, I am so worried about what's going to happen down the future, because we should all want better for whoever comes after us. And unfortunately, the trend seems to be going the opposite direction. So I just think like we all have a responsibility. And here's the thing, regardless if you are a conservative or a liberal or somewhere in between or further than either of those goalposts, you feel the way you feel because you want better for something. And, I'm not one of those who's like, we can just talk it out, because there are a lot of issues that you can't, and that's like a huge fucking, I feel like that's like the ultimate gaslight, is like people being like, we can all find something in common. Cause like, yeah, of course we can. But just cause I like hockey and the guy down the road likes hockey, but he also thinks that fucking black people are lesser humans, that's not the same, Yeah, we have a commonality in hockey, but I can't just overlook the egregious racism, So like, it's just the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard. And so,
it's that whole like decorum and like, what's the thing that like a lot of like pundits and stuff say? They're like, flesh it out in the in the realm of ideas, or like debate the ideas and we'll come out. And it's like, yeah, but like we're living in two different realities of philosophy and morals. Like, it's just like at a certain point, you just don't, you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean you dismiss people or you don't want, like, I want better for everybody, including those terrible human beings in a lot of ways. Right. Like, but that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with them on anything other than, like you said, maybe hockey or music. Right.
That's the thing. Right. And like debate requires two people who are like willing to have their ideas challenged. And unfortunately, man, like the last 5-6 years have totally changed how we accept new information and how people interact with each other. Cause it was the perfect storm of Trumpism and the pandemic and the internet just being fucking buck wild, it's the perfect storm for shit to just be off the rails, with the whole like fake news thing. Like at first it was like kind of funny. We're like, aha, he's saying fake news. But then it snowballed into people being like, for us, it's the CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. People like, defund this state propaganda. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not the same, like.
Yeah, no. And it's like, yeah, state propaganda owned by the corporations, right? Like,
what I mean?
Like,
fuck, man?
Yeah, it's so backwards, but really, really good topic to write about. Unfortunately, it's something that I think gives people a lot of lyrical content to write about. You could always dig into that and probably write a whole album about it, but it's a good thing to write about. And the emotion definitely comes through with the song. To go back to the song a bit, we could talk about this all day, and maybe we'll get back to it because I could talk about this all day. You know me, but to get back into the band a little bit, and thanks for going over all that because I really appreciate hearing kind of a deep dive on that song because the song's fantastic and the content again is something I think is really important to write about. Let's go back a little bit earlier and want to talk about the EP you put out last year, Better Days. You know, definitely, these two new or three, I guess, these songs, and then the other single that you put out that I was thinking of earlier, To Live in Hell, are a good trajectory from this EP. The EP is fantastic as well. What was, you can speak to, if you want to pick a few songs, we could pick a few songs, whether it's Under the Weather, Now or Never, Blackbird, 401 East, Plastic Crowns, Wake Up Call. There's all the songs for anybody that hasn't listened to it yet. But was there kind of influences you had for the writing process? Who did you work with to record that, or who was the producer you worked with, and any lyrical content you want to talk about as well?
Yeah, it's weird because Better Days, like, we love those songs, but the EP is more of like a compilation of songs than a cohesive writing thing, and that stems strictly from, I started writing EWR, which isn't on the EP, but that's the first song we ever put out in like 2018 by myself, and then Quiet Nights had a little bit of collaboration, but it was mostly me. And then I got this band together and I was still writing like everything, so and it was also just spread out over time. So like I say, the EWR was like 2018, Quiet Nights was later that year. I wrote Plastic Crowns and 401 around the same time in early 2019. And then I kind of got like a band together. We always say we played our first show like early 2020. And that's like mentally true for us. But if you want to get real technical, the first ever Riverside Drive show was April 2019. And we played like 6 songs opening for Rarity. And
nice.
Yeah, it was cool. Nobody showed up, but that it is what it is.
Right. That's cutting your teeth in a new band, though, man. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes.
That's exactly it. And none of the guys who were on stage with me that night wanted to do another show after that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to stop writing these songs. So, like, if you guys are out, that's cool. I'll find people, no problem. And that spring, I found Eric, and he's our drummer, and he has been with us the whole time since then. And we've had a couple people like come and go since then, but since he joined the band, the writing has been a lot more cohesive and a lot more collaborative. And we also have discussions that I just wasn't having, like with myself, about what we wanted to do in terms of sound. So that's like a really active discussion right now, especially with the dichotomy between Wake Up Call and Whatever It Takes. And no, Whatever It Takes and Counting Down the Days. And yeah, so like those songs, there are a couple on the EP that we wrote together, but again, it was just us like writing songs. And they're still like, I back all of those songs, but you can definitely hear that one song is like different from the next, like immediately. We go from 401 East, which is this ballad about not being able to sustain a long distance relationship, to this like super fast, angry minor key song, Plastic Crowns, which is about, fucking rich kids. And so, yeah, it's like, I still love that EP, and I think the songs on it are really good, but I'm also really excited to go forward and take the lessons we learned from that. And, the only reason it turned out as good as it did was because we worked with Ryan Fitz from Bearings, and he is just phenomenal. He has a really good ear for what's going to work and what's not. He's also really good at telling you if something sucks and you should change it, which is super important.
Valuable.
That's it, right? Like we're not paying for an engineer, we're paying for a producer. We need a guy who can be like, this could be better. And anybody who's heard the demos of the songs can attest to the fact that they turned out way better than the demos.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, right? You don't want to just go in and recreate what you recorded in your garage. So yeah, the EP, like, I think it's great, and we're still super proud of it. And the anniversary celebration we just did validated that, because we had 100 people packed into a room singing back every word, you know, so
that's awesome.
It was so sick, dude.
And that speaks to, you know, you talk about the first show you did, there was nobody there. And I don't know if it was as a result of that or the other guys just didn't like the music they were making or whatever. But then, like, you know, you have some guys leave after that. And then fast forward, you have, you know, a triple digit crowd singing back words, you know, in a relatively short span of time, really. Because, I mean, I was in bands that played for years, and you were happy when, you know, 45 kids were at the show, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, that's still great. That's a thing to be proud of, for sure. So that's really cool. And it makes a lot of sense. You're talking about that as a collection of songs. I think every band's first release, even like some of your and I's like favorite bands, their first record is not, even if it ends up flowing well, it's because they wrote 13 songs and they're able to, you know, track list it enough to where it's cohesive. But a lot of times everybody's first release is exactly that, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a collaboration of songs when you first start a band or when you're by yourself, and then the band comes in and everything else. Numerous people I've talked to, everyone's debut release is like that. So that makes a lot of sense. It's a great EP. Like I said, I just got the vinyl myself, so I absolutely love it. But it's good to hear that these last couple songs, it sounds like they've been a little bit more collaborative with the band. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's like super cool too, because now we have what I am envisioning as like the long-term lineup of the band, and I hope that they feel the same way. And if they don't, we're gonna fight. But no, so, you know, like, Eric and I have been kind of spearheading this thing the whole time. But we have Jack and Drew who are in the band now, and Drew has played in bands for a long time, and Jack is like unreasonably good at guitar. You know, and I'm not saying this in like a derogatory way, but he is autistic, and the thing he focuses on is music, guitar, gear, and just like writing. And he's fucking brilliant, dude. He's so fucking smart. And like with Eric and I, we come from like the punk world, so we're like, just plug in your guitar and make some fucking noise, dude,
and rip. Yeah.
And so we do that, and then Jack will literally just sit back and kind of watch, and then he comes to us like 2 weeks later. He's like, I have all the leads done, and it's fucking sick, dude. It's so good, you know. And with Drew, like I said, he's played in bands for a long time, and he kind of stepped away for a bit, but he's coming back to it, and it's nice to have the perspective of like two people who used to slug it out, you know, 10 years ago, and now are coming back to it with the best way I can describe it is like, what, you know, when you're like listening to something and you listen to it so often that you kind of just get tired of it. So you put it down for a while and you come back to it and you notice a bunch of things that you didn't notice before. You come back with fresh ears, or with visual artists, they come back with fresh eyes after staring at a screen for 5 hours, you know, like taking a break from something is sometimes the best thing you can do to reignite the creativity for that. And I think we're witnessing that in real time with this band. And just like, I am more excited and more confident in the future of this band than I ever have been. So it's cool, man. We're like super stoked for everything coming up.
Yeah, awesome. That's great to hear. I wanted to ask, after going through the EP a little bit, so thanks for going over that. With these last two songs that you've put out, is there, I don't think, I was looking through the socials just to make sure, but I don't think you've announced anything, but is there an upcoming release you're talking about with more songs? Are you thinking on doing just like a bunch of singles? Are you like, what's the idea with going forward with more songs and the trajectory of the band?
Yeah, we're writing a ton right now. So with those two songs, it's an unfortunate necessity that even if you don't have like an album ready, you have to give people something to chew on, because everything is accessible, which means nothing is accessible. And if you don't remind people that you're there, they'll forget about you. So those two songs, like, we're just like ready a little bit sooner. We went up in November and we recorded those, and we just wanted to give people, you know, something, like I said, to chew on for a little bit, but also a reminder like, hey, we're still around. We're not doing anything, but, yeah, hoping to probably record an EP or maybe a double EP in the fall. We'll see what happens, and we'll have that out as soon as we can. And yeah, we're not slowing down anytime soon. You know, we have a couple shows coming up this summer, hoping to hit the U.S. at some point. We'll see how that goes, and
Yeah.
then just keep on rolling. You know.
Hell yeah. Well, that's good to hear. And you're absolutely right. You know, like I talk to, no matter what genre of band I've talked to, or even I talk to people, you know, I've talked to a few people that aren't in music that do like political commentary or something like that. And they all say the same thing, that like you have to constantly just have things out. Right. Like one of the guys I talked to, one of the political commentators I talked to, which is funny, him and I talked about how music and what he does is so similar and what you have to do now, that he's like, there's so many people doing this that if I don't put out, for him, it's like if I don't put something out like once or twice a day, like I'm just lost in the shuffle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I have to constantly, and he works a job too. And he just like comes home, races to find things, puts it all together and tries to put it out real quick. And I was like, yeah, that's what it feels like with bands, even anymore, with like not just music, but social media, with just like, even if you don't have anything to post, just posting something, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just so like algorithms remember that you're active and everything else. And like, as much as we all, you know, like, as you know, like I've started doing like a little recording projects just for fun myself. And like, I'm always an album guy. Like I was like, I want to do 12 songs and then put it, and then the other guy I was talking to is like, no one's going to listen to that. Like who's going to like check out a band they've never heard before on Spotify and listen to 12 songs? Like nobody. Right. So it's so single based. So it's good that you guys put these out. Cause I mean, it's just going to keep people interested, and, you know, diversifying the music the way you did and having them kind of go a more aggressive route in some ways, in different ways on each song, definitely helps too, to just have a little more variety and have, you know, people that maybe listen to some different things have some ears on it, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so going from there, maybe you talked about a little bit that the band started in 2018, right? Like kind of the first singles you put out were in 2018 at least, right?
So so
sorry.
that's okay. So the way it like came about was I put out a solo acoustic record in 2016.
Oh, okay.
And no, I will not tell you how to find it. But you know, like
I'll find it.
You better not. So I started writing songs that I thought were going to be on the next record for that, and it became apparent very quickly that I needed additional people and instruments to create the sound that I wanted to do. So it made sense to just kind of retire that and put a band together. So I started writing the first songs in 2018, and I think we recorded EWR in 2018 and maybe Quiet Nights too, but then we put those out I put EWR out in 2019, and then we were broke, so the studio withheld our mix and we couldn't get it from them for a while. Which is fine. They're a business. They have to do what they have to do. But
Right.
yeah, we had no money. So when I'm the only one putting in effort and putting in, you know, it was just a pain in the ass. But finally, we finished up Quiet Nights. We released that. We did Plastic Crowns with Alan Day from 4 Year Strong in 2021. And that was like pretty cool. But we also really liked the way we originally wrote Plastic Crowns, which is how it is on the EP. So we have both.
Right.
But yeah, so like I would say that a band starts when their first song comes out, and that was 2019 for us.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So to go back, I won't make you I won't make you talk about the acoustic record. Don't worry. But
Well,
to go
I
back
can
a little
talk
bit
about it, but it's not good.
What? So it's Riverside Drive, because you know, it's pretty rare, I guess, to hear somebody talking. I didn't know. Basically, is this the first band you've ever been in, or have you done projects in the past? What got you started in writing music, or what got you started in punk music in general?
Yeah, well, I was always interested in it, and you know, I started learning guitar when I was 11 or 12 or something like that. And I'm not much better than when I started now, but it it's like I feel like the purpose for learning any form of art is to create, you know, and it's so fun playing cover songs and learning how to play things. Like last summer when Stranger Things wrapped up, like I spent 3 weeks learning the solo to Master of Puppets, and I played it once and I never played it again.
Right.
So you know, but on the flip side of that, if I create something and I write something and I put it out, even if I put it down for a while, it's still there, you know. And
Hmm.
there were a lot of really impactful moments for me that solidified that I wanted to write music and play my own songs and hopefully have people like them. And like, not to Josh flex too hard for those who know, but like the Rise Against thing both times was so impactful for me. The first, like, I was 17 years old on stage in front of 15,000 people. You know, like,
Yeah.
that's, I will never experience anything like that again, probably, you know, but that was enough for me to be like, I want to do this. I want to do this
Yeah.
forever. And so that was like really significant for me. And also just like, I've always liked music. Like even when I was a kid, I was singing and I don't know, it's just always been the thing for me. So it just naturally makes sense that I would gravitate towards wanting to create it and share it with people as a self-expression, you know? So that's
Yeah.
where that comes from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's both sides of that when people learn music, right? Because I know some people, it's so strange to me because I'm the same as you. Like I learned, and I learned like American Idiot from front to back on the guitar or something like that. But then as soon as, I wasn't in a band until I was like 18, 19 years old, but I started playing when I was like 8 or 9. But I was always sitting there riffing my own stuff because you just wanted to create things like your favorite bands
Yeah.
did or whatever. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be in a band. It was just like, I just want to make, you're just sitting there playing. So I totally get that same thing. That I think there's kind of two sides of that coin. There's people that really try to learn, like, especially people that are into things like even like Metallica or people that were like metalheads or classic rock fans growing up. Like they just want to learn their most complicated songs from their favorite bands. And there's
Right.
other people that want to learn just enough to where they can make the kind of music they like on their own. And then it's
Mhm.
more of the creative process, right? Like, and I feel like you and I are both definitely in that camp. So I totally get that. And I'm glad you brought it up. I was gonna talk about the Rise Against thing, obviously, because that's fucking cool. And you bring up that the first time you did it, you were 17, but you actually got to do it twice, right? So
Yeah.
so kind of talk, where the hell, I mean, I know you've talked about this before, but where the hell did that come from? How does a 17-year-old get on stage to play with Rise Against, and then how do you get to do it again?
Oh
you know?
man. Okay, so like first things first, for anyone who's in the AAC who's listening, you have to put aside the Josh Flex bias and just be happy for
Yeah.
me, okay? You have to just
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
stoked on this. So the first time, it was as I was like starting to like for the first couple of years of playing guitar, I kind of didn't really take it seriously. Like I could do power chords and I could play Miss Murder by AFI and like whatever. But it was like once I was into my mid-teens and I was in high school that I started like really taking it seriously. And it's because that was the first time. This will sound so dumb, but it was the first time I had competition. You know, you're a teenager who's going through puberty and the hormones are there, and I went to an art school where there were like 1,000 guitarists, and like all of
Yeah.
them were better than me, and all of them got more attention than me. And if anybody knows me, I physically require attention to survive. So that wasn't gonna fly, you know. So I started
That's
taking
awesome.
it more seriously, and it was also like it wasn't until I was like halfway through high school that I even found Rise Against, you know, that I got into them. So I really dove in like 2014. The Black Market had just come out, and I just like I think I knew some of their songs in passing from like music video games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero, but it wasn't until I dove in and like just bought Appeal to Reason on CD. And I spent the summer at my grandparents' house up north, and they live in this super small town where there's nothing to do. So I was just
Hmm.
listening to that CD like every day. And there was this one song that's stuck out to me really heavily because the rest of the album is pretty breakneck and very fast paced and very energetic. And then there's this acoustic ballad where it's slow and you're forced to listen to the words and you're forced to absorb what the song means. And that obviously is Hero of War. And I had seen them at Riot Fest in Chicago in 2014. And for those of you who were there, rest in peace to our shoes and our pants. Um, but in 2015, they were coming to this like B market city, which is like 2 hours north of where I live. It's called London, Ontario. And
Hmm.
they were playing this big like festival, not like big festival, but it's the big one in the city. Um, and I don't know why I felt compelled to do it. but I made a sign, and on one side, I'll pull down the sign and I'll show you in a moment. On one side, I like drew their logo, like the heart fist and everything, and it says "Rise Against, thank you for everything." And on the other side, it says, "Please let me play Hero of War." and like I wrote "please" like 5 times along the bottom to really fill out the space. And man, it was just like the perfect culmination of unfortunate circumstance that like led to me getting up there. So I was right up front. I'm a barricade camper, you know, so I was up front, and they were playing, and they had seen the sign because they had all kind of like pointed and like made, you know, interacted a little bit. But at some point, like way in the back, people were pushing on like a barricade and it broke. So people were kind of just filing into where they weren't supposed to be. So the festival like stopped the show, and the guy who was running it came out, and he was just being like a condescending asshole. He was like, "If you guys don't stop, we're going to just stop the show, and Rise Against, you're going to go home." And like, you can't talk to 15,000 people who've been day drinking the way that he was talking to people.
No,
you know?
No.
So So Tim like came out with a microphone, and he was just kind of like talking about the times they'd been in London and the small little bar they'd played there when they first came through. And somebody threw a t-shirt on stage, and I think this is what made it happen. The t-shirt said, "If the troops fought for freedom, they would attack the government," which at the time was like kind of like, whoa, but now it's like, oh, you know, like
yeah.
Now I like roll my eyes because it doesn't mean the same thing it did like almost holy shit, 8 years ago, I guess.
Not 9, right? Yeah, if it was 20 or no, 8. You said 2015. Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't mean the same thing, but yeah. So he had that shirt, and he had seen the sign that said "Let me play Hero of War," and he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, what does that say?" And I showed him the Hero of War side, and he says, "Okay, and what about the other side where I had drawn their logo and said like "Thank you for everything"?" And he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna think about it. I'll let you know." And so like, I'm not dumb. I know what "I'll think about it" means. It means we're gonna do it, you know. So so he's talking a little bit more, and their bassist Joe came out to like look at the sign, and he looked at Tim and he went, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna happen." And
like, oh shit, yeah.
And Tim is like, "Yeah, you know what? Let's do that." And before he even finished his sentence, I had hopped the barricade, and I was like going up onto the stage, and I walked out, man, and like everybody was super nice to me. Like their crew like set me up with a guitar and everything. But this is where it kind of went sideways for a minute. You'll know what I mean, but for non-music people, guitars can be tuned a lot of different ways, and there is a standard tuning, which is just E, A, D, G, B, E. And then there is a half step down, which is E flat, A flat, you know, whatever the fucking letters are.
Yeah. I got it.
But it's a semitone off, and if you play 2 notes that are a semitone off, it sounds fucking horrible. I didn't know that they gave me a guitar tune down half a step. So I was playing it as if it was in standard, while Tim was playing it the way it was. And so we were playing full chords, a semitone off, and it was atrocious. It was the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And like, we started, and both of us immediately knew something was wrong. And we kind of looked at each other, and we were like, well, like, let's stop for a moment. And the crowd just started booing me immediately.
Oh, no.
But here's the thing. Like, I knew the song. I'd played along to it like so many times. And so we convened, and he was like, what tuning do you know it in? And I was like, standard. He goes, oh. And he just like took a capo off his guitar, gave it to me. We each played the first chord. We were in the same boat, and then we played the song, and it was fine, you know?
Dude, what a cool... I mean, Tim is such a cool guy, too, because you could totally see, like, a front man in front of 17,000 people kind of being like, all right, never mind, you know, you don't know what you're doing, get off stage. And instead he's like, oh, no, we got a capo for you, you're good to go.
And you know what's funny, man, is, like, I've talked to him about that, like, a couple times since, and he's always like, no, I could tell by the way you walked up there that you knew what you were doing. And he's like, if you were, like, a little shy, like, it might have been different, but, like, I'm not shy, you know? So,
yeah.
Yeah, we played the song and it went great, and then I just like went back in the crowd for the rest of the show. But I've seen Rise Against so many times since then, and Tim knows me, and we'll usually like say hey pretty briefly after a show or something. And they came back to play that same festival 3 years later, like to the date. And I kind of finessed the festival a little bit. I was like, hey, I'm the kid who played with Rise Against 3 years ago. Is it possible to get on the meet and greet? Because I knew that they do meet and greets. And I'm not going to mention that I've met this band 40 times, so like,
yeah.
So we got on the list, and it was like, what was super cool was the first time it was just me. I went up on the stage, the song ended, and I left. But this time I had my mom and my best friend with me, and we all got on the meet and greet list. We all got to hang out in like the backstage area. And so like the meet and greet happens, and they come out and they're like, oh, hey, Josh, like, what's going on? And like, I was the last one in line. So we were like chit-chatting a little bit. And I just said to Tim, I was like, hey, man, like, I have to ask, we're at the same festival 3 years later. Like, do you want to do a song again? And he goes, yeah, that could be fun. He's like, what do you know? And they had just put out the album Wolves. So I was like, I know every song on the new record. He's like, we don't. So we're not going to do that. And so we kind of tossed ideas back and forth. And he's like, why don't we just play Hero again? And so we did that. Yeah. And they hooked us up with credentials to stay like backstage for the day. So like, my mom has been like backstage at things before, but like my best friend never had. And so as much of a treat as it was for me to be able to spend the day surrounded by like bands that I like and stuff, like it was so nice to be able to show him that side of things, So
yeah, absolutely.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it rocked, man. And then we planned it that time. So they were like, this is the song before you come out. You'll walk out, we'll play the song, and like I'm on the set list. I'll show you that too. Like my name is on the thing, and it was super cool. We played the song. There's the picture that I'm sure you've seen where Tim and I were like practicing in his trailer like before the set. And man, like I hope that if down the road my brain deteriorates and I have some sort of neurological disease, that's the last memory to go. Because I will never feel the way that I felt doing that ever.
Yeah, just talk about like, I think that's like every kid's dream, whether you're a teenager or even an early adult, like you probably were the second time 3 years later. Like, who doesn't want to be able to jump on stage with one of their favorite bands and just rip a song, right? And like them also be cool about it. And just like it just be a fun experience, other than the nerves of playing in front of 17,000 people, there's not nerves about what the band's doing or anything like that, or how they feel with you doing it. So like, but that also goes to show like, that's what, I don't know, when first time I heard that story, when I joined the group that I've met you through is when I heard that story, I was like, God, Rise Against doesn't just like talk the talk. They genuinely are just like the coolest people. You know what I mean? Like for a band that plays pavilions and like amphitheaters, and I've seen them co-headline with a band like Deftones, which I know is your favorite band. But to see
clarify,
them like,
no, they're not. For those listening who couldn't see my eyes roll into the back of my soul, I hate Deftones. Please continue.
Disagree, but whatever. But what the point I'm making is like one of the biggest bands, at least at a certain point, one of the biggest bands I would say in the world, is that down to earth is also like a really cool feeling to have, and I'm sure a lot of people could take note of that are in big bands when it comes to interaction with fans and just like remembering to stay grounded and just have fun with a fan that can play a song, right? Like that's just so cool,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I know bands can't always do that because you've seen it with Green Day where they always bring somebody up on a stage, and like I'd say half the time they bring up somebody who just doesn't know how to play the instrument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that is a risk that you run with that, and so like, and I've looked, man, Rise Against doesn't really do that thing that very often. So like, I think I kind of got a little bit lucky on that one. But
yeah. Well, either way, it worked out, and that's just like you said, such a cool memory to have. Thanks for going over that. That's just like I think that's just super fun. Before I get into the last thing I've been doing, why don't you go grab? Do you want to grab those things to show for all? Because this goes up on video on YouTube. So go share them real quick. Yep.
All right, let me put my ears back in and we'll go over it.
Sounds good.
this is really exciting content for your show. I hope your fans are liking listening to this.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what? I might not even cut out. Cut out the dead noise. They can just appreciate the little sounds going on.
Yeah,
It'll be fine.
You have to leave it in. That's the rule.
That's the rule. Yeah. I'm too lazy to edit things anyway. You know.
So there's the set list.
Oh, sick.
And if you look down,
you can see
Hero with Josh on acoustic.
Yep.
And so that's pretty cool. And then this is the Let Me Play Hero of War sign.
I love that you still have it. That's awesome.
Well, I'm not getting rid of this. Come on.
No, that is so sick. Never mind. Yeah.
So,
that's so sick. You got to hang on to that for forever.
Yeah, if my house burns down, I'm getting that before I get my dogs. I'm sorry. Like,
amazing. Yeah, no, but again, just so cool. So before I let you go, I've got, I just want you to, if there's anything coming up for the band you want to plug, if there's anything we missed that you'd want to talk about, we can talk about it here a bit. And then the last thing I've been doing at the end of these episodes, where kind of people do fantasy drafts for sports. I'll basically ask you if you weren't in Riverside Drive, or if you were and you had to get all new members, what band members you would want living or dead from any bands that you listen to, kind of an all-star cast for your band. But first, Is there anything else before we get into that? Is there anything you want to plug for people? Is there anything you want to share for where they can find you guys, or anything coming up for you?
Well, the first thing I want to do is say thanks again for this opportunity and for having me on, man. Like, you've talked to a lot of really cool people. Like, that episode with Garrett was insane, so like,
yeah, it was dumb how long it was, but I think people enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, I thought it was sick, but like, I'm just thankful that you're doing this and giving all sorts of different people a shot. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're up to, like, we've got shows in Ontario throughout May and June. So if any of our Canadian people want to come hang out, we'll be in Toronto. We'll be in Owen Sound. We're going to play a Windsor show in June. Then we're playing some like pretty small, like Zed markets,
Zed markets.
So that'll be cool. I'm really looking forward to that. We also have like a ton of merch, and as a broke band, buying shirts is the best way to help us out. So I'll send you the link to that. But we have vinyl for better days. We have new hoodies. If you're watching, Brandon's wearing one of the new hoodies, and it is super sick. So if you feel like throwing some lowly Canadians a couple of smackaroos, that would be nice. Stream our music. That's the best way that you'll help us out, because unfortunately now, like, everything's a numbers game, right? So you could be the coolest band in the world, but if you don't have 1,000 monthly listeners, nobody's going to consider you. So
right.
So just whatever your means of supporting or helping us out, like, it all comes out in the wash, and we appreciate everything. So even if it's just shooting us a message to say, hey, new song is cool, or like buying a record, please buy the records. I have so many. It all helps. And so we're just super thankful, because we're just a band from Windsor, Ontario. We're a local band, and we're mailing out our first EP on vinyl, so that's pretty cool.
Right. Absolutely. And also, just to make sure before we get into it, and I'll put these obviously in the notes as well, but for, I think, all social media, it is RSD the band, right? Mm-hmm. On Twitter, I'm just going to double check that they're all the same here. Yep. On Instagram and on Facebook. Yep. Facebook, it's Riverside Drive ON. All the rest are RSD the band, but I'll put all those in the notes too for anybody that wants to find them. So again, thanks for doing this. And then, like I said, the other thing I'm going to do here is, so just imagine you are either not in Riverside Drive, or you're in it. All the members unfortunately leave, but you get to pick anybody. It could be living or dead as well, right? But anybody from any of your favorite bands to play bass, guitar. You could throw in keys. You could throw in a theremin if you want to. but just who would you throw in for those roles?
Do all of your other guests have to go through this?
Yeah. A few have punked out on me, and I haven't held their feet to the fire, but I might hold your feet to the fire and make you do this.
Man, like, it's so
and
hard.
And it's not do or die. It's just fun, right? You don't have to kill yourself over it.
What'd be sick is, like, I would relinquish my vocal duties, because I've always said I want to play a show with my band where I just play guitar, and that'd be fun. I would have Haley Williams take over, and that would just skyrocket us to success immediately.
There you go.
Drums. I don't know. I don't want somebody who's like too good, because if we have too many egos, we become the Eagles and then we break up. So
yep, yeah.
So maybe somebody who sucks at drums. Maybe the guy from Metallica.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. That was just a funny thing to say.
No, of course.
You know who's like a crazy underrated drummer is Mike from Bearings, Mike McCarricker. I hope I said it right. He's insane. So you know what? I'm recruiting him because he's going to help us out. So we've got Haley Williams from Paramore, Mike from Bearings. On bass, this will be such a Josh answer, but like Matt from Blue October, but like 20 years younger, so that he's not the old guy in the band.
Okay. Yeah. That works.
Because he's crazy at bass. Like, I didn't appreciate it till I just saw them in March, and man, like, the dude's an animal. So we've got Haley Williams, Mike from Bearings, Matt from Blue October. Who's playing lead guitar for this band? A lot of dead air. I hope your listeners.
No, it's fine. Dead air is fine. Sometimes it's a thinking man's thing here. You know, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm not like into guitarists the way that most people who play guitar are. So like,
you could be a one guitar band. You could
no,
be.
That's not cool. No, it has to have two parts.
Could be a laptop. There we go.
True. Stevis from The Chariot.
Hell yeah! What a great group you got there.
Yeah, because we're nothing if not interesting, you know. And and honestly, like, I don't think Stevis is maybe the most technical player out there, but like the guy puts on a show, and that's what matters. So,
well, I was gonna say, you had anyone from The Chariot, your live show goes up about 200% with reactions and just like craziness. You know what I mean?
So to recap, here is the all-star band. You have your favorite influencer, Josh Lowe, on rhythm guitars. You have Stevis Harrison from The Chariot on lead guitars. You have Mike McCarricker from Bearings on drums. You have Haley Williams on vocals. Who did I say for bass? Did we do bass?
Yeah, you said Blue October?
That's right. Yeah, right? We got him too. Sure.
Yeah. Hey, that's a hell of a lineup, man. And I could see it actually working a little bit. I could see that having some crazy stuff go on. So hopefully I keep this thing going on long enough that by the time I keep doing this, I can go back and use AI to make a song with people like this connected, and then we'll be good to go.
I don't know if you watch Family Guy, but there's this episode where the four main like guys decide to learn become a string quartet, and everybody but Peter is like pretty good at it, and Peter sits down to like join them, and he's like just fucking up all over the place, and it's he's like the only guy who's not good, and that would be me in the band that I just created.
No, man, you'd hold up. Don't, give yourself a little credit here. But thanks again for doing it. I appreciate you didn't wimp out, because I have had a few people wimp out, and I'm not a big enough of a jerk to hold people to it, so I appreciate you still doing it.
I will. Hang on. I'll bully your former people, and you can use this going forward. Hello, my name is Josh Lowe. I play in the world-renowned band Riverside Drive. I've sat here with Brandon for the last hour, and he followed up with a good question. If I had to create a supergroup, who would be in my band? And after much musing, trials, and tribulation, I came up with an answer. And if a bumbling idiot such as myself can come up with an answer, so can you. And if you don't, you are a coward and shall be remembered as such in the books of history. Thank you.
If you don't think I'm going to clip that and put that on social media, you got another thing coming. That is definitely going up on the clips and the reels.
You better. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Awesome, Josh. Thanks so much for doing that, man. And one last thing. You've had a couple of singles come out. I guess we could do whatever it takes, since we talked a little bit more about the lyrical content. We could also do your most recent one, Counting Down the Days. What song do you want to play at the end of this?
Man, let's do Counting Down the Days, because that has performed way worse than Whatever It Takes, and I want people to know that it's a banger. So
all right, sounds good.
Force that to listen.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good marketing strategy. There we go. So we'll play Counting Down the Days at the end of this from Riverside Drive. Had Josh Lowe on today, the vocalist and one of the guitar players for the band. Thanks again, Josh. I really appreciate it, man.
Dude, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Till I never have to see you.